Cool.
I guess so. I am here with Ryan Carroll from Ronin MMA and Jiu-Jitsu in Parkersburg, West Virginia. Is it technically Parkersburg or is it like
Yes,
a different
partner.
Parkersburg, West Virginia? And also brown belt in Jiu-Jitsu, MMA fighter, has done a bunch of stuff. But what we want to talk about today, because he's a gym owner, as am I, navigating through a couple of things with females at the gym, meaning that one thing we're going to talk about somewhat is the difficult subject of dating, and then also just some things that pop up really between the members or students at the gym, meaning the men and women, and how to stay on top of things and why that's important. Because if you don't, what we've noticed in the past is sometimes that becomes a problem, just animosity between men and women, especially if they date, and people quitting the gym, or just a number of kind of things. It's kind of a big subject, but we're going to do the best we can with a couple of those things, and see what we got. And this is, we already know this is going to be a difficult subject, I think, in a way, but hopefully not. I think what we want to do is give our perspective as gym owners, some of the things that we've come across, maybe a little bit of advice that we can give some people in the future, and some things like that. But anyway, Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit of the things that, without naming names or anybody like that, right? Some things that you think, because, and here's why I have Ryan on this episode, obviously, is Ryan does a really good job at his gym. He has an MMA program, but you don't have a lot of MMA fighters per se, right? I think you're doing MMA, which
Right.
is what I like nowadays, right? Both of us have been fighters. Both of us have trained fighters. And I think at this point in our career, as trainers, we're looking to help so-called normal people learn how to defend themselves, learn a new skill, and have fun, right? And I think, I don't want to speak for you, but I know for me, I've found more enjoyment and fun in that lately than I have in
Absolutely.
training. Right? Look, I'm not going to pretend like being in front of 10, 20,000 people and having somebody that you train and somebody you care about, going out there competing, and that emotion that comes afterwards, right? Rather win or lose, rather you're crying, or sometimes even crying when you win, and both of you just feel, I mean, that is an amazing feeling, right?
Oh,
But I
absolutely.
also think I get more nowadays out of just regular people, men and women, learning the same skill, and then maybe telling me, hey, somebody picked on me, somebody bullied me, somebody started a fight with me, and I was able to take care of myself, and or nothing happened. They just felt more empowered, especially for women. They felt more confident, and they can. I think, and then, although it's not one event with all these people, I hear just a billion stories of normal people telling me this day to day, right? And I think at this point in my life, and I feel the same for you, that that's why we like training so-called normal people now, is that we're doing a bigger impact for our community
Oh
than
yeah.
we were just training a handful of 10 or 15 fighters, right? Do you agree with that? I think, and then
Absolutely.
obviously we have more women, right? More kids, and that's why we're talking about this subject. Is now it's not just hardcore fighters that are in there, like, they don't care if I'm going to beat your ass, you're going to beat my ass, we're going to go at it. And at the end of the day, we're just going to be this brotherhood, or with females there, a sisterhood, I guess, or whatever. It's just going to be this something, but we have the common bond of beating each other up and
Yeah.
taking it, and then after, we have that. So we still have that to a certain degree, but things are changed, right? And now that we have normal people in there, we have normal real world problems, and that includes them dating each other, which becomes an issue. That includes just friction in the gym, people not having good social awareness, right? Mistreating men or women,
Right.
just whatever, right? So I guess tell me what you think about this subject. It's kind of a big subject, right? But we'll kind of break it down little by little.
Yeah. It is a rather large subject. And
I
it's
don't
something.
know if we're gonna knock it out in 10 or 15 minutes, but we'll see what happens. Yeah.
No. You're right. It's a huge subject as far as like I see a lot of gyms. I've been to a lot of gyms, and I've tried to pay attention to the female ratio per male ratio, and it's always a lot lower than the men. And I think it is picking up a little bit, here in the past couple of years. But one thing I've noticed throughout the years is you'll get like one or two females, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they wind up not showing up anymore. And it's not because they don't like it, and it's not because they suck at it or anything. Usually it's attributed to the opposite sex, to be point blank. And the same on the male spectrum, as far as like a lot of times the guys wind up not coming also because of the opposite sex. So I think like in the past 2 years, I've really kind of paid a lot more attention to it here lately. And now that I've especially moved to this new gym, and I've kind of been able to oversee a lot more, I guess, look under the microscope per se, and kind of step back and watch them, and kind of see how everybody interacts and who interacts with who. So it kind of gives you a little bit better insight. Like for me, I was, I'm always 100% involved with rolling and everything, but whenever I have maybe someone in question, right? And it's nothing against anybody. It's just you can usually see. I don't want to say tension. There's always something there, whether it's the guy or the female, and it just kind of sparks an interest, And you're like, yeah, I just kind of see where this is going, or I want to see where this is going. And so a lot of times I'll kind of sit back and watch and kind of, I guess, figure out a game plan per se. Um, for me, seeing them come and go, and it's not just adults, it's the kids too, because it's such a broad spectrum when it comes to those, because even like with the kids, kids jiu-jitsu, the ratio is also, it's always been very low as far as women versus men. But I think here recently I've actually got a good 50% females versus my boys. And a lot of that is attributed, I believe, to, for lack of a better term, like the woman empowerment kind of deal is kind of what I'm working with, right? So I guess starting off with just the kids class, I noticed that they obviously, younger girls, they attract themselves to a female, what's the word I'm looking for? Role model per se.
Yeah.
So, on occasions I would have like a female, I'd just be like, hey, I need someone to help me out in class, because I've got, 20 kids running around trying to beat each other up. Who can help me? And luckily, I've had one or two women step up. I've had other guys too, but there wasn't that connection. And now, I would have like a woman come, and you notice that bond, and it, I think, has helped drive them a lot more because they see a strong female representation. And kind of like, it was weird, actually, this past Monday where we had kids class, right? And all my new boys were there. There was like 8 new boys, and there was like 4 of my girls that have been with me for like 4 years, and they're all like gray with white stripe, and so they're really good. And it was kind of cool because none of the other boys had gis. They're all brand new. And then here was, my 4 females. They all had gis. They all were kicking ass that day. And I was like, all right, now you guys know, this is not a male versus female type thing. I said, but if you look at who is, excelled, I was like, it's these 4 females. You guys need to learn to respect, and this shows, the hierarchy basically of knowledge and technical proficiency and stuff. I said, so you guys have to, look at these girls and say, you have to respect them. They've spent the time and everything. So I think that kind of empowered them a little bit, because here as of lately, man, they're little monsters. Like, the girls, even my smallest girls, they'll get in there and they go in the cage and they'll put on the gloves and they'll just have at it with all the boys. It don't matter big or small. And I think that's helped tremendously having a female come in and be a good role model to them, being like, hey, we do this too. It don't have to be a bunch of buffed up dudes, because, obviously in a young female's mind, they look at that as well. They're like, I mean, I would assume, I don't know. I think that helps them out a lot, having that female role model. Um, Plus, I think having that female there during the classes kind of keeps the weird sexist remarks out of the air. Because, like, I'll notice if I have a all kids class and nobody shows up to help, um, the boys will be like, oh, it's boys against girls, and you can see it different in the respect level versus when I bring another female in, like they'll shut up. Like tonight I had one of my females, white belt. I had her just run the warm ups because I want them to, not only the females but the boys. I want the whole class to see, it's not just me. A female can run it just as good as I can and have you still do the same stuff. And as long as you reiterate and be like, hey, pay attention to Miss Tina, Miss Jamie, whatever. And they had 100%, and actually they listened to her more than me. Usually they're goofing off and stuff, and I was like, I was kind of walking around being the lack of better term monitor or whatever, the disciplinary. But I just had her do warm ups, and stuff like that, and she was perfectly fine with it, and she had a very good response, or they responded well to her, I should say. So,
I think that's a great idea, right? Like, I think what you're doing, that's a good idea. So one thing we talked about, and that this has zero to do with what we're talking about. But what I'm going to say is that if I forget some stuff, this is years of getting punched in the head. So a lot of times when I'm talking to people, I write notes, and I didn't remember my notebook today. So hopefully I don't mess everything up. But a couple of things that I noticed here, and I think one, actually two things I don't want to forget. Two, and I'll say them quickly so you can remind me. One is you stay on top of things, meaning that you're aware of the situation. So that's one. It's good leadership and as a gym owner. And then two, say I already forgot the other thing, but it doesn't matter. So the other thing I was going to say, probably one of many things, is that I like how you're integrating people. So I'll just rather whatever I was going to say or not, I forgot. But let's just say, like, I think it's important when you come in a gym, it's obviously hyper masculine for the most part.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'm actually pretty careful at our gym about keeping that, like, in the summertime when it's hot and everybody's doing stuff, and I've got a bunch of guys running around with their shirts off and doing that stuff. I usually tell them, hey man, like, just at least wear a rash guard or something. It's not for anything wrong. It's just that when we have kids' parents come through and everything else, I don't want them to feel uncomfortable, not, because you have a good body or bad body or whatever.
Right.
It just makes it a jock testosterone fest that we don't even think about, because that we're in the midst of it, right? I want everybody to feel comfortable. You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of women will feel they're fine, right? Because it's working out, but some won't, right? And I've had guys at my gym in the past that, and they may have good intentions, meaning they treat the females the same as the men. So they'll come in and literally change their clothes in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And they're not wearing, it's like they have underwear on. It's no different than wearing Valley Tudor shorts or spats. Right. I know maybe in their mind, they're like, yeah, it's not that bad. It's the same thing I'd wear, right? Like, but I'm like, it's not everybody's comfortable with that. You know what I mean? It's a fine line, right? Like, and that's what we're saying here. Like, I'm not saying, and you're not saying, what's good for everybody is good for the other. And people need to be careful of that, meaning that there's some women that say, I want to be treated just like the men, right? And they get annoyed if you don't. There's other women that don't want to be treated like the men. They want to come in and they want to feel comfortable. And so I think what happens is those women don't last and don't survive, and it's not for the right reasons. It's because the instructor is like, look, man, like this is my gym, this is what's happening. If you can't cut it, you're not going to be here, and that's fine too, right?
And I think that falls along the same line that you was talking about. Uh, like 95% of my people, right? They all love MMA, but 95% of them are probably never going to step in a ring, right? But they love the aspect of MMA. They love training. They love fighting, sparring, punching, kicking, and everything. But shit, I lost my train of thought.
Okay, this
Um,
people
but
listen. I mean, what happens when people get punched in the face? It's a real thing. Just let I literally was on a work phone call today, and that's what I had to tell him. I was like, I have to, my short-term memory, I have to write everything down, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, why? And I said, because I get punched in the face. Like, I can't, I used to have a great, I had a photographic memory up till I was 19, and that's when I started doing MMA and sparring and stuff. And then now I'm this, and you're what you are, right? So it's kind of like, you know, whatever. So don't make fun of us. So it's, you know, but you know, the other thing I noticed too, like so what I was going to say is that, and I think unless you have, it's hard to have women's only classes, right? Because you have to have enough women for that. Some women, same thing. Some women don't want that. They want to be involved in the men, right? Like there's a lot of women that kick our ass and they can do all that stuff. But there's also a lot of women that flourish in that environment because now they don't feel uncomfortable. And let's face it, right? Every gym's full. Like not everybody's normal, right? Like
right.
some people don't know how to interact with females, and some people don't know how to interact with females, especially when you're rolling and you're putting your hands in weird places, doing stuff, and they get, maybe they're just goofing around, right? Like they're maybe not being so weird, but maybe that girl doesn't want to goof around. She's got a husband at home that,
yeah,
you know, she's, you know, I don't want to be like tickling somebody or biting somebody, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of flirty. That's not right. And
I think that's what I was going to say. Yeah, like not to cut you off. I just have to remember. But like as I was saying, like 95% of my people that come now are not ever going to be true fighters, and they are your more like a better term, happy homemaker moms, who do come and enjoy the MMA aspect, but it takes um, a different breed of woman, right? You have your hardcore MMA fighters who, maybe male or female, and they have that different mindset that it's not necessarily going to bother them, whereas if you have your normal people, who I respect tremendously, who come in all the time, but their mindsets, I think, are slightly different. And I think that's where that weird line, like you saying how guys will walk around with their shirt off, because I've, been accountable for it too. And I have to watch what I do because I don't want the lady who comes in, twice a week just because she enjoys hitting mitts and stuff with me to feel super uncomfortable because I have my shirt off, right? Or you have other guys running around, and it's not a disrespectful thing. You're just hot and you want to take your shirt off.
you have to know who you're with, right?
Right, and I think that's what it boils down to is their comfortability because if they're there for the hard training aspect, they have no they have their blinders on, right? So they're not thinking about you being sexual in any way, shape, or form. They're just like, oh, well, he's hot, like as in he's sweaty hot, like versus
You got, right?
yeah, you got your other group of people who's like, what the hell is he trying to impress me? Does he know I got a man? Like, but we don't think about that half the time, and so sometimes I do have to look back because, I have a bad habit. I'll wear my Valley Tudo shorts all the time, and, but that's just how I've always been.
No, that's fine. But so really, if I was going to bring it home, which is another part that you were talking about earlier when I was thinking, is that really, as an instructor, you have to be cognizant of these things, right? So a lot of times when it's just fighters or regular people, guys, you just kind of fly on autopilot, right? You don't have to think about it. Because usually even guys, like if they're being inappropriate with other guys and it just works itself out, right? Because we are in a semi-fight sport. So if a guy's, I'm not saying we don't have to step in, because sometimes you still do, but if somebody's like picking on somebody, ultimately a lot of times they get it out of their system. But then sometimes, look, it works its way out. It's a little bit different. The guys are different. But it's the same thing. If you're picking on a female, sometimes females are more sensitive. It's just the nature of the beast, right? Some aren't.
Right.
Some are just like being with the guys, and then some are, it actually hurts their feelings, and they react differently, right? So, and really, you and I talked about this before we got on this little podcast thing here, was that's really the key to is, and I think you do an excellent job, and that's what I would probably take away from this is what we need to learn about, is being on top of things. Like, if you see somebody that's doing something that might make somebody uncomfortable, one of the things that you told me before you got on here is that you pull somebody aside and you say, hey, do any of these things make you uncomfortable? I'm getting this vibe that something's weird here.
Yeah.
Tell me your thoughts, and then you go from there, right? I think it's super important, because if you let things fester, or if you think things are going to play themselves, a lot of times they don't. They play themselves out. They don't, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's right. Like, I mean, there is that. I hate. Well, not that I hate using the term, but you do develop that repertoire, that family type ideology, right? Especially when you're around each other a lot, and you're sharing, some of your personal things, so you do look at it, like for me, when they come in, whether it's guy or girl, a lot of people, they have a tendency to tell you that, their personal issues in life and stuff like that. So you do develop that repertoire. So for me, I kind of use that tool, to gauge, what needs to be done, or how I can interact with this person, and I try to do that when I first meet them. They'll come and they say, hey, we want to start class. And, right off the get, I try to pick up little things like, I ask them, your typical, hey, you ever done anything like this before? Just to kind of get a feel for them. And usually I'll throw them right in the mix just to kind of see how they interact and how they feel comfortability wise, with, not just male and female, but in general, like I'll have, younger kids in my adult class, who are too old for the kids class, but just old enough to be in the adult class. So it is a lot of that whole sitting back and watching. And a lot of times I'll make sure, and I'll tell my higher belts, like, hey, make sure, if I feel something's kind of off, and I'll ask my other higher belts, I'm like, hey, if you see something out of line, or if you feel any way, shape, or form that something may be off with one person or another, don't be afraid to say something, and typically I don't even have to say that anymore. Usually my guys will be like, hey, Ryan, did you know, blah, 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 is doing this or that, or they're just kind of, anymore now it's like, hey, they'll just kind of look at me and I'll be like, oh, okay. So I'll pay more attention to, what's going on and stuff. And then I try to address the situation right there. As far as like, I'll pull the person off to the side, not like in front of everybody. I'll just be like, hey, let's roll. And while I'm rolling with that person, I'll be like, so, what's going on? Are you feel uncomfortable? Blah, blah, and I have found that it's when you don't put them on the stand, right? So, because, for us, jiu-jitsu is playful. So for me, when I'm rolling with them is when I talk to them the most. I'm like, hey, they're trying to put me in armbar or whatever. And, usually I'm just pretty lax. And I'm like, hey, so what's up with blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh my goodness. And, so as we're rolling, it kind of makes them feel a little bit more at ease, and it's been guy or girl. And I'm like, okay, well, if you don't feel comfortable rolling with that person, you absolutely do not ever have to roll with them. Like, yeah. And I'll tell them straight up, like, if that's not something you want to do, don't do it. You're never, and I even tell, the whole class, like, hey, you don't even have to roll. Like, if you just want to pick a partner and just go off to the side and you just want to drill, that's fine. Like, I will never force you to have to roll with anyone that you don't want to. you
Yeah.
know. And I think that open line of communication and not having that weird hierarchy of, well, you have to do this or you specifically need to do this. Um, I just don't see that as a go-to route, you know. But you know, like I said, a lot of times I do like to throw them into the fire, just to see who interacts well with who. Um, you know, and I kind of base everything off of that. But I guess kind of going back to the point of like keeping people in the gym, you
Yeah.
know, and our common thing that I've always seen was is just where the females disappear. Um, and you know, for me, you know, that's one of the biggest things because uh, I don't want to say they need it more, you know, because that sounds horrible. But I would like to see more females involved with it because you know they are more of a subject of a self-defense type scenario, right?
Yeah, nothing wrong with saying that.
That's
Yeah, just for a
statistically
little,
speaking, you
right?
know.
There's no,
Um, so I would prefer, you know, that more women stick with it and stay with it. Number one, because they're just uh, they become really great. Like the ones that I've seen stick with it, um, they wind up just I don't know. They're like sponges. They soak it up and then they're just really good at it. Um, so I don't know. Trying to keep them involved and keep them there, you know, and kind of like how we was talking beforehand, you know, the whole dating aspect. You know, you can look at the situation, and I guess it depends upon the couples or the people involved. Um, but you know, 99% of the time, you know, once that couple has broken up, one person is subjugated to leave almost all the time, just because they don't feel comfortable around the other person. You know, every now and then you'll have ones that are like, oh, okay. But on the flip side too, having a couple train together, that's you know, I've seen married couples come in and they fight like cats and dogs. You know, it's horrible to see, you know, a married couple trying to roll together. It's very rare, you know, and I don't know why it's weird, um, but I've always seen that kind of in and out. I don't know.
no, that's a good. I think so. Which is because this is a brand new subject too. Like, and so let's talk about that. Let's kind of subject that. So I think to wrap that part up really is the first part. You need to stay on top of things, right? And we
Right.
can get through that even with this next thing. It's just yes, look, things are a little bit different. Even if we're not saying people aren't equal, we're just saying the situations you need to stay on top of things. And part of staying on top of things is now you have males and females. The natural tendency now is that they're probably going to date, right? The reason is because now they're doing something they have in common.
Right.
And in my experience, you can just look at Instagram or Facebook. If a girl posts a picture of herself in a gi or a rash guard, 50,000 people like it. If I post a picture of me in a rash guard, 4 people like it, right? Like
Yeah, absolutely.
something, yeah, guys, I don't know if it's just, you know, the fact it's just, it's a turn on for them maybe because, you know, pretty girls doing something that they're really interested into. So the
Right.
next step is now we wouldn't even say worry, but you're going to have some people dating at the gym. And one of the things that you and I talked about before we get on here too was that, you know, look, I've been fortunate or lucky enough to have 2 couples that got married, and they're perfectly happy. They've been married now for maybe close to a decade, and the other, you know, 5 years or so. But they are happy. The ironic thing of that is those 4 people is they don't come to the gym anymore. None of them, right? So even though they're happy, all 4 of them don't come no more. But
Right.
the downside is, which we find more, is this is what you're bringing up. 99% of the time, they're going to date, and one of the 2, if not both, are going to leave the gym, right? I've even had a couple things where you know, people hooked up to the gym that maybe shouldn't have hooked up, right? And that caused drama, meaning that they were in other relationships or anything like that.
Right.
But it doesn't matter, right? What the commonality is that once they break up, and look, people break up. It's just what happens, right? Now, how do you navigate that? It'd be great if both people are mature and great and stayed friends afterwards, but typically they do not.
Yeah,
Right?
and I think that's been the biggest case that I've seen is where and uh, yeah, I mean they break up and one or both usually leave. It's weird, and it is unfortunate because usually they find that, like you said, that commonality of they both love to do something together, and then they just once they break it off, one or both usually wind up leaving. But and I think and it's not necessarily at my gym or even at your gym, but I've seen it at a lot of others where females have left because they felt uncomfortable, whether it be they were the only female in class or they just didn't feel comfortable because Joe Schmo was checking her, somebody's oil, not necessarily hers, but you know, so kind of going back on that, I was actually talking with a female in my adult class, and I'm pretty open with her. I try to keep the lines of communication relatively more open. And I was just like, because she kind of had an encounter with another younger kid. And she's like, yeah, he got in my guard. And he's like, man, this feels super weird. And she's like, yeah, it'll feel weird at first. And I said, well, she says, well, what do you do about that? I said, make it more uncomfortable and joke about it. I said, that's the only thing you can do. I said, because if you look at jujitsu, honestly, and if you took the same two guys and you put them out in the middle of the street somewhere and they're half naked and they're in between each other's legs on top of one another, you're going to think they're out there screwing. Like, you're going to think there's two gay guys out in the middle of the road. But you put them on a jiu-jitsu mat, it looks way different. It's how you look at it and how you perceive it. And I said, so it's like that first month, that breaking in process. Once you can get past that weirdness of, oh, I'm a girl and I'm on my back with my legs spread and there's a guy, like in between them, or, I'm mounting this dude or he's mounting me, or like a guy on guy. Because that's even been the case where guys have been like, dude, I don't want to come there. That's some gay shit, like, I've heard that before, and I'm sure you have. And so I guess you kind of got to gauge the person you're talking with. But a lot of times I'll just try to make them feel even more uncomfortable, because I think that when you try to rationalize with them and be like, no, man, no, it's cool, it's just jujitsu, that's like, then they have a retort back. But if you say, yeah, it's pretty gay, isn't it? Then they're like, yeah. And
No, that's a good point. Yeah, just lighten up the situation, because you're right. If we're talking about male and female, the same situations that are going to make a male and female comfortable maybe are slightly forgot about in the guy thing, but it shouldn't be, right? Because you should talk about that. So you don't think it's uncomfortable to be between guys' legs? I mean,
yeah.
Like maybe they never thought of it. Like, well, yeah, maybe, it is. It's the whole, like, look, jiu-jitsu is an odd sport in the fact that there's some awkward positions going on, right? If we try to pretend that there's not, it's not like boxing where I just punch you in the face. I mean, that's not that awkward, right? The other one's it's pretty odd.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's fine. I mean, and because of those odd situations, that's why people end up dating each other. Right? Like, I think sometimes they find out they like being in those weird situations. Like, and that's what. And look, and this is one of the things we talk about. Can you stop people from dating in the gym now? Like, people have policies. I could have a policy. You could say, hey, like, don't date your teammates, right? That's going to make them want to date more. Anytime you tell somebody not to, they're going to want to do it more. And so that's fine. So, but I think going on, this is the most important thing that you've said, and I think and you could lead by example, is that it's just staying on top of things. So for example, my real life job is jiu-jitsu, right? I have a gym. I have 9 gyms or something like that. But my other job, I'm in medical device sales, right? And so they sent me to leadership training. I didn't even know there's such a thing, right? So they train you to be a better leader. But a lot of that is just recognizing the differences in people and learning, and then knowing people learn differently, and then knowing that people have different personalities. That's, I think, the problem with today is that we want to pretend that everybody's the same. They're not, right? Like, meaning, like, that doesn't mean I don't treat everybody as much as the same as I can. However, we learn differently. You may learn visually. Somebody else may learn by notes. I mean, that's a real thing. Some people are uncomfortable in certain situations that other people aren't uncomfortable. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't make them a bad person. It doesn't make me a different person. You just have to recognize those differences and address them. So I think that's the most important thing that I learned in leadership training, was that if you don't address things, they end up typically becoming bigger problems than they need to be.
Right.
Then when you try to address them, it's too late, because by that time people have too much emotion involved, and they can't separate the emotion from the facts, because now at this point they've built up a story in their head of why this situation is what it is, or how bad this person is, or what this person's intentions are. Truthfully, we typically don't really know people's intentions, right? You assume, like, somebody could say a joke that's inappropriate, but they really had nothing behind it. It was just literally a terrible joke. Yeah. And then the other person takes it as this person was hitting on them inappropriately, and they're a sexual predator and blah, blah, blah. But I think those situations get worse if they're not addressed. And that's one of the things I had to learn, and I did learn in that class, that leadership thing, is because I had to typically, my coaching style was let people figure things out. And typically that works out, right? Yeah. In some situations, maybe in my real job, where let's say that you, for example, had a problem with somebody else. I could let you guys kind of work it out for long. And then my theory was I'll step in when they can't figure it out. Yeah. And then I learned that works a lot of times with certain people. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't work. Like, it wouldn't work with my wife. You know what I'm saying? Like, if she was really mad. And here's a good example. And I think this, it was in a book that I read, like, where it's a man and woman, married couple. And then, anyway, so a bill came to the house, a credit card bill, and the wife opened it. The credit card bill said like $150 spent at such and such hotel. So the woman made up in her head before the husband came home, like, that he must have went to this hotel with another woman, and he cheated on her. And so while she's waiting for him to get home from work, she's made this story up in her head that's getting worse and worse. And she's like, how could he do this to our family? And he's ruined our lives, and he's blah, blah, blah. And I mean, she's just in it and in it and in it. So he walks in the door, gets attacked. He don't even know what's going on. He's like, she's just like, how dare you do this? And so that's an example of a situation being so bad, and neither one of them are talking. And and when he's trying to say, like, I don't know where this comes from, she's saying, you're a liar, you're a liar. When all's said and done in that situation, when we separate those two people and looked at the facts, what happened was that married couple went out to dinner at a restaurant that was associated with the hotel. They used this billing situation. It came as a bill as the hotel. So now they had gotten a huge fight that it was unnecessary because emotion was involved, right? So what they're saying was, in that situation, was the lady should have not made a story up in her head and got the facts first, and not been so emotionally involved and got some. But I think, so why that story is important is what I've taken from that is to keep the facts involved in situations, get the true story, but also stay on top of things, because what she maybe could have called him right away and said, hey man, I just got this bill from a hotel on this such and such day. What is this? Right. And it kind of worked. And they didn't, because now her emotions were involved. It's too late. But and my point is with that, it's kind of the same situation. That's kind of what happens at the end. Emotions are involved, and now I can't talk to you. If you were in that situation, I can't talk to the woman, because she's like, he was at this hotel with this woman, he's blah, blah, blah. And then the guy's like, I was not at a hotel, she's a fucking crazy ass woman, and blah, blah, blah. And right. And so you can't talk to either person. Right. But if you were to jump on that first and you said, well, this is, 9/12. Where were you at 9/12? Well, I was at dinner with my husband. Where were you at 9/12? I was at dinner with my wife. Oh, so this is that date. Where were you at dinner at? we could have figured it out in 2 seconds, right?
Yeah.
So the point is, I think what I learned from that is and it's maybe not the best example, but if you stay on top of things, right, I can keep people from getting emotional involved, and then I can settle situations. And the same could be from dating. I think if somebody dates, what you need to do is come to them first and say, hey, like, this is what I've seen in the past. Doesn't mean it's going to happen with you guys. I've also seen some people get married.
Right.
It could, right? But the other side is one of you may get hurt, or both of you may get hurt. One of you may quit the gym. Maybe both of you quit the gym. Maybe you don't feel comfortable. All these things you think that are okay now may not be in the future.
Oh, yeah.
On you, because we're going to have to deal with this, and then blah. So then after that, they date for 3 months. At 3 months, when you could tell they're fighting, maybe have that conversation now. Say, hey, look, I told you this was going to happen. It happened. So big deal. It happens to everybody. Here are some things that we can do. Maybe I can keep you separated for a while. Do you have a problem with this person? Let's try to keep it out of the gym. In the gym is a time where all of us are supposed to keep our emotions at the door, clear our head. We have this 1 hour, we have this 2 hours, whatever it is, to have fun, to almost meditate on the fact that I think of nothing else but training. All my trainings went away, all my work problems went away, all my house problems. So let's keep the drama out of the gym. Can we do this? And then that might help. But if we never address that situation, then people are probably just like, I don't want the drama. I'm just not going.
Right. And, and like you said, it is about like staying on top of it. And I guess there's a weird fine line because us comparatively speaking to like, a Planet Fitness or something like that, or just a weightlifting gym in general, we have that personal connection a lot of times where people do talk about, the personal lives because we see them, anywhere from 2 to 5 times a day or a week. And so we do develop some sort of bond or a connection in between them. So, we do share a lot. We have people that have been there more than 6 months or a year. So, a lot about each other's lives. So you do wind up sharing that personal aspect. And it is hard sometimes, I'll catch myself talking, where drama will, it seems like drama will start. And you just kind of got to back up and you're like, well, okay, so let's just drop that. And if we need to address an issue with that person, then, let's address the issue. That's plain and simple. Because, like you said, the gym is not a place for the drama to be, whether it's girl, guy, whatever. That should be our place of meditation, enjoyment. That's where we go to, relieve stress. And essentially, if we're allowing that drama to take place, then we're kind of defeating the purpose of what we're intending to do. And I think that's just our due diligence is trying to stay on top of it and making sure, that doesn't happen. Whether it be making light of certain situations, just kind of joking around or, for whatever reason, and there's been instances where we've had to, basically get rid of that person. It was a common census, and, because I don't just like get rid of a person and be like, okay, well, they're just gone. I'll make sure, I'll ask around, like, hey, so did you roll with this person? Did you interact with them? What are your thoughts on them? And that's typically what I'll do. Like when I have a new person, I'll wait till the end of the class or whatever, till they're going or something like that. And I'll just, politely ask my other people. I'm like, hey, so what do you think of the new guy? Is he, goofy? What is, or is she crazy? Like, is she funny? Like, and just not setting a preset ideology about them, just kind of getting their feedback. Were they a good wrestler? And usually the first things that they say is, they're, if they say, oh, well, they're just a jerk. Well, then, that's what stood out the most. Or if they say, oh, no, he's a great wrestler. He's kind of, silly or, whatever, but I mean, he's a good wrestler. So, and that tells me, where we can kind of go from there. So, okay, yeah, he's got good skills, but maybe he sucks on people skills, or, maybe she's a horrible person, But she loves jujitsu, so we need to kind of work on this. Or you have people who are backward shy, or different things like that. So kind of using my what's the word my common senses of people, or my normal people that come all the time. I kind of use them as a listening board, more or less, and get their feedback. And then, we kind of discuss it every now and then. If it just, and it's not on everybody, don't get me wrong, it's not like we vet everybody that comes in. But, sometimes you'll have that one person who comes in and you're just like, well, what do you think, guys? Like, and sometimes I'll just ask them out of the blue, how this person is, what you think. Because typically something will just spark a little bit during class, whether it be, they act just odd, or they may something off canter, they'll say something off canter. And, because I know a lot of people don't want to say anything to hurt anybody's feelings. So they usually won't say anything to their face or anything like that. And they're not going to be the ones to be like, hey, that dude's a jerk, in the middle of class. So, and I kind of give them that option, to discuss more or less how they feel, about what's going on. And I try to address the issue usually within the next class or so. And it seems to work relatively good. We have a pretty good thing going, and I think we kind of boast ourselves upon that, because anytime anybody comes to our gym, that's one of the first things I mention. I'm like, hey, we don't believe in anybody being bullies. We don't believe in people being jerks. And there has been some instances where unfortunately we'll have some people that show up and straight out the bat you probably don't want them at your gym, right? But they're like standout factors, like, hey, I just got out of prison, I've got 30 counts of domestic abuse, and they call my nickname is Crazy. Can I come join your gym? Probably not. Like, but that's the nature of the beast, I think. And and I don't hide that from people. I'm just like, yeah, this guy, he wanted to join a gym. What do you guys think? They're like, no, 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 no. And
It's a good thing keeping people involved too. Makes them feel part of the family, which they are, right? So if you guys make decisions together, then you're makes your team feel more empowered as well. Which again, like I said, that's something I learned in that leadership classes. That's a form of leadership, right? If you can be a dictator, right, or you can make people feel involved in the situation or the problem, and then they also take ownership, right? And then that's how you're going to get better. Just better throughput of everything, right? If I involve, just like you said, if you involve all the members in your decisions, ultimately you have the right, like they could all say one thing and you can still do the other. You are the leader, right? But if you involve everybody, they take ownership and they feel more part of the team, and they feel more about like that their voice was heard. So they're going to listen to what you're saying,
And I think it's helped over the years, at least here recently in the past few years, as far as giving them, everybody more of a voice. Because, when I was under, other people before, it wasn't necessarily like that. It was just like, well, we're just going to go with the flow, whatever. And so that agitated and aggravated people, and it rubbed them the wrong way, because, it was either that way or no way. So there's no common senses of, hey, we really don't like the way that either you're conducting with this person, or this person's conducting themselves in the gym. And it was like, hey, just deal with it, and you have that one bad apple, and that affects everybody in the gym, and I would sacrifice losing that one person to keep all my other people, 110%.
If you have good leadership, one bad apple shouldn't take out the team. Or it really shouldn't. I mean, honestly, like at some point, the instructor has to take ownership of that, because look, I can say that as an excuse any time of the day. I can say that when it happens. Like he was an idiot and blah blah blah, and it's everybody else's fault. but the bottom line is, even if you're letting everybody take have an opinion, and you're still the captain of the ship, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you've if you don't step in and somebody ruins the whole atmosphere of your gym, it still should fall back on you. So I think, and the reason I'm saying that is that you don't let that happen, from what I can tell, and I try not to let that happen at my gym. And I know, from what I can tell from a lot of the good gyms, there's a great, in West Virginia where we're at, ton of really good gyms. So that means that there's good leadership, right, for the most part, right?
Right.
And that's the key to what we're saying. Like, if we're going to bring this home, which you probably should do, right? Because we can talk about forever. But I think that's the thing, is leadership, right? So what we, just to kind of sum it up, is you do a great job. So when I'm looking at from an outsider, and that's kind of what started this, is you have a great gym that has great involvement from men and women, and I've been at your gym and spoke to both the men and women. Everybody's happy, and I love seeing that. It's truly, like we said, we want to train everyday people. Everyday people means it's a mixture of men, women, black, white, it's everything, right? That's what we got, and that's what you got. So in order to make that work consistently, you have to have good leadership. You have to stay on top of things. So I think that you've implemented a lot of the things that we all can learn about. And one of the other things that I remembered I wanted to talk about a long time ago, but is what you said earlier too, is putting some females too in positions of empowerment, not only because they're females, they deserve the job too, but there's nothing. I teach a lot of self-defense seminars, and obviously I'm 6'6", 250. I teach a bunch of women. Like, what do the women say? That wouldn't work against you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But if I brought a woman in and she does it against me, okay, it works, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, I have the girls, the kids class, and I'm so close in the neighborhood that, they'll drive by and they're like, hey, is such and such going to be there? And I'm like, well, maybe. They're like, okay, well, can you make sure that she comes? Because that gives them, a different look than other, here's Ryan who's in great shape, blah, blah. And then, you have a female come in and it's like, oh, okay, it clicks to them a lot more, and I guess on that flip side of the coin, it is also the whole, that's why I don't teach an all women class, because, if if you're going to be attacked, it's going to be by a guy, more than likely.
You've got to be lucky enough to have those numbers. We talked about this earlier. I've seen some in Kentucky. I've seen some prominent females have an all women class, and I had one years ago, and it just so happened that I had enough to do it. Right, it kind of works out. I don't now, and I've had some women request it, right, because they feel more comfortable with women. But I said, look, like with the numbers we have, if we did it, then you show up and you're by yourself, right? It's better if we don't do that, because if there's 5 girls, they're just not going to show up all the time. It's what happens, right? And then I got a class of 2 people, and it's not working out. But if you're in that position, look, and everybody's cool with it, I think it's a fine thing, because sometimes it makes women feel more comfortable and they get more out of training.
Right.
For your more hardcore people that we all know in jiu-jitsu that compete in MMA, like, it doesn't matter, right? But there is an aspect of our society that it does matter. So that's the other thing too. We can't push our beliefs on everybody. So it goes with the leadership thing. Just because the way I feel, like if I'm like, hey, it's all fine, all you women should feel the same, and another woman should be the same. That's okay. That's great. That's your opinion. But there's going to be some that don't feel the same, right? And it's a difficult situation, because I know what people are going to say, because you are going into a predominantly man-dominated thing. And so some people would say, well, if you're going to go in there, then if you can't hang, then you can't hang. And look, I get what you're saying.
Right.
I'm not that gym anymore, right? Like, I was that gym at one point where it was the same for guys. If you couldn't hang, you couldn't stay. I didn't care.
Yeah. And you just can't do that anymore. It's a different world, and what I have found, that treating them, or treating the whole gym in an aspect as everybody being equal, and not forcing the whole everybody's a 100%, UFC type fighter, that allows them to feel the opportunity to grow if they do want to wind up fighting. that way there's no weird pressure, there's no nothing, and you know, it allows people to excel without having that weird pressure on them, I think. You know, because I've had ones that just started out with just like some cardio boxing. And then as they've progressed, they're like, man, I really enjoy choking people. Hey, I like punching and kicking. Hey, like, can we spar? So I kind of leave it up to them, you know, and leaving it up to them, you know, male and female alike, I think it's turned out beautifully because they don't have that pressure of, well, you're training as an MMA fighter, so you have to be a certain way versus, like I said, 95% of my people aren't hardcore MMA fighters, so there's no pressure. So I don't know, I think it winds up being better in that aspect because they hit that certain goal and they're like, okay, cool, now, let's do a Superman punch or whatever, Um, I don't know, it just seems to work out better that way. I get more out of it, they get more out of it.
No, it's exactly. We want to give everybody the greatest opportunity for success, whatever that is, right? So, like I said, part of that is leadership, paying attention to things, recognizing things, giving men or women every opportunity to succeed in the training. We have to be better leaders too, right? Like I said, everybody doesn't learn the same. This goes for men and women. So if you're staying on top of things, like we said, it's kind of the main theme here for staying on top of things, whether it's a man or woman, they're going to have a better chance to succeed. And that's the point of it. I like what you said here. So like I said, we'll kind of finish it up here. I want to give you credit for having such a successful gym with a lot of men and women that are awesome. This specifically was brought up because of all the great females that I've seen at your gym that I met and that I would like to learn from you. That's why I'm on here. And for our other affiliates that don't have a great female membership, they're probably looking at ways to succeed. And we could follow this up with other ways how to recruit females and to get a better membership rate with females and to try to get them interested and get their attention. That'll be a whole nother subject, right? But I think what we did most importantly is like when you do have that aspect is how to navigate through that, stay on top of weird situations, make sure people feel comfortable. If there's dating going on, or if there's dating's brought up, how to navigate through that. It's always going to be kind of a mess just because when people break up, their feelings are hurt. It's going to happen. Just, go through that. The other thing, I think the final thing that I want to bring up that I was real impressed with is that, and we just kind of really talked about it, is just putting also, if you have the opportunity, putting females in a position of leadership, and not just like you mentioned, really, that the girl was a white belt, really. It's kind of wasn't made. You said it in passing. It wasn't made for any reason, but I also kind of was thinking that is important because sometimes we get so caught up in the belt rank and this, and then somebody could be a really good instructor, could be really good with kids, could be really good with making people feel comfortable. It doesn't matter their rank, and that's why they're in the position, right? Like I taught a gym when I was a blue belt, right? At the time that's what happened too, but I was a blue belt, right? So there's people now would argue like you shouldn't be teaching a gym at a blue belt, right? But I've succeeded and I've been around the game for 20 some years. So what I did have was good people skills and probably decent. I made a lot of mistakes and I learned from them, but I'm still around. So I have that. So you could groom a person early on that just started and kind of really fill them in and put them in a good position.
It's crazy because like what you're saying, I know we're trying to wrap it up here. But like I've had a couple females that, they've been with me for maybe a year or so. And where I was doing the pro bono thing, basically, where we go to the church and teach for free, to those underprivileged children and stuff. And I kind of picked a couple females, and the repertoire that they had just with the kids alone, they weren't even, necessarily barely a one stripe white belt. But the interaction that they could have and the familiarity, with the other females and the other males in the group setting, from ages, 4 to 14, that in itself was worth its weight in gold versus saying, hey, this girl's a black belt. Because they were able to interact and to, you know, I don't know, do everything that, I guess I'm trying to, they did very well. I guess is there's no other way to put it. But yeah, you're right. You know, I've kind of used that as an aspect. You know, it doesn't matter, you know, their belt rank as far as that goes, because they just have that connection with people. And I like putting people in that situation, whether male or female, just to kind of see how they interact. Like every now and then, maybe like once every month or so, I'll sit down and be like, okay, guys, and I'll point to all my people in class and I'll say, hey, I want you to show everybody in the class one thing. I don't care what it is. Show them and break them down step by step, baby instructions, how to do an armbar. And I kind of use that as a tool to kind of gauge, you know, everybody just a little bit. Plus, it kind of gives them the opportunity to not only uh, show, you know, what they learned, but I also tell them it's a tool because whenever you instruct, you learn all the time, you know. And I said, and it's because if you break something down into baby steps, it forces you to think about certain things that you may not have thought of when we're doing it because we're so used to the repetition of things that our muscle memory takes over, you know. So I kind of use that as a tool, and you know, some people, you know, stand out a little bit more than others sometimes. And that's again, that's just stepping outside the box and kind of looking at it and saying, okay, you know, this person speaks eloquently. You know, they can address a crowd, and so, you know, that's someone you want to keep around because you know they can help you, you can help them. Plus, they're going to learn a lot more just by you having them teach on armbar or whatever, because then it helps them to understand everything a lot easier. Um, so yeah,
Good. No, that's a good, again, not to go back to that class, but that's another good aspect of being a leader is putting people in positions to succeed, right? So you recognize a talent in people at your gym and put them in a talent or another a position where they can flourish, succeed, excel, maybe become an instructor, and then you, even if not, just help in general, which empowers them, which makes them a better, you know, part of your gym, and makes a better cohesive group as a, so honestly, so without you being to the same class as I've been to, you're already doing mostly the right things. So that's good, which is ironically a lot of the things that I found out too, you know, as part of you and I have been put in these positions, maybe not because we wanted to be instructors, right? But it's because we had some of the skills and some of the aspects that made us good leaders and instructors, and people naturally followed us, and then we're here where we are. Like I didn't wake up one day and thought I was going to lead a gym, and I don't know if
yeah.
you did either. It was my agenda, and here I am 20 some years later, right? I started in the 2000s. It should probably start in the 90s actually. So it is what it is, right? So we're here, we're doing the right thing. So, and again, it goes back to, you know, for people that are struggling with this, and really it doesn't mean like I'm trying to get better every day as a leader and instructor, and part of that is just staying on top of things, and maybe the things that I do don't always work, and I got to recognize the mistakes that I make and do better. So anyway, that's what I'm saying. So we've learned with, you know, with the women in the gym and stuff that and the guys, right, like, is just staying on top of things. Like I said, I like what you're doing to encourage women membership by putting, you know, the people that worthwhile in those positions, you know, you know, they're in positions of leadership where they're going to show other women that they could be there too. So I do like that.
Yeah, and
Good.
honestly, like, and this is kind of just a quick side note, like I notice, like my kids class, predominantly it's the moms that drop the kids off, whether it's boy or girl. And for me, when they see a female come in to help, like a little spark, like I don't know, they kind of enjoy that a lot more. They love the idea. They're like, hey, is such and such coming tonight? So if I got 12 kids, usually, I've got like 20 parents sitting out there around watching, and a good 90% of them are all female. So for me, having a female come in and you got all these other females who are watching, it's a totally different ball game now because, typically they're used to a guy teaching martial arts. That was the stigma, like we was talking about earlier, the old karate masters, back in the day, it was always typically, these guys who were teaching martial arts. And now, you have these females, young females, or, someone who you wouldn't, I guess, necessarily think as a MMA fighter, we'll say, coming in and joining me side by side, or just running the class and me kind of watching as things are going on. I think that's a great thing that the parents and women in general, because I think that helps us as instructors as well to kind of also bring in more clientele, because obviously, we're not in it just for the fun. I think that does help us in a business aspect, because when they see that female coming in and standing beside me, it shows that we're not just a bunch of egotistical, masculine, jerks. That, hey, I'm perfectly fine with this other female standing beside me, and we're doing the same thing. I'm not belittling her, and she can do everything that I'm doing, and I think that's kind of one of the things that I really enjoy when I see, one of my females come in, is the look on the parents' faces, and they acknowledge that, there's another female up there teaching and instructing. I don't know. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. I mean, ultimately, besides navigating through the couple of issues that we thought might happen, I mean, we talked, started off with, we want everybody to show up, right? Men, women, old people, young people, whatever. So that's kind of what I want. If anything, the point of this is to encourage. We want more females and women and young ladies to join and get the benefits of jiu-jitsu, get the benefits of MMA, to teach their kids and defend themselves and learn something useful. And I think that's the aspect that everybody's struggling with. And kind of why I wanted to talk to you about that is that, you guys have a great female program, women's program. And I see a lot of your pictures and a lot of females posting about how much fun they're having and how much, the gym means to them. And, I've struggled with that through the years as far as building that up. And we have a small, I have a cardio kickboxing class with, 50 women, but I would like more in jiu-jitsu. We just have a handful now. And, I do better, but like I said, besides giving you props, you've done a great job. And I want to say, great job to anybody that I'm missing too. Just really, because I think they deserve credit too. And, I know the gym in Huntington that I know has had a great group of women that I talk to. Even a lot of them I'll talk to on Facebook, because I'm just really impressed with what they do. And some great women training, and obviously in Beckley and Parkersburg and Lewisburg and Elkins, and I mentioned a lot of West Virginia places because that's where I'm from, but a lot of places in Kentucky and Ohio and all these places. But it's encouraging to me, because when I first started, you just didn't see a lot of that stuff, and now not only you see it, but you see those people can kick my ass, and I think that's awesome. I want that to continue. I think when Elio Gracie started jiu-jitsu for what it is, whether you want to give him ultimate credit or not, but let's just say that he, just give him credit for what it's due. He wanted everybody to do it. It was a self-defense thing first. It's became what it's became. But yeah, anyway, the point is not to really separate men from women with this, even though this is kind of what we did. It's because we really wanted to say that, there's different aspects you're going to need to watch out for. There's certain things you're going to need for that. There are differences. As much as we want to treat people the same, that's how you're going to lose people. Is if you treat them all the same and you don't stay on top of things, you don't be a good leader, don't be a good instructor / gym owner, you're not going to you're going to miss out on a lot of people that just quit because of a simple problem. So anyway, ultimately, let's wrap it up here. Let's say I want to say congratulations for all that you've done. I've got to learn a lot from you. Even though I can say the right things, I got to start implementing the right things. So I'm going to learn a lot from you on this. A lot of the things that we talked about, just as far as being a good leader, maybe putting some more of my females in different positions where they have a more prominent voice and people see them more, is what I'm missing, really. Probably that is actually one of the main things that I can fix. And maybe this goes out to the other gyms, and really this helps me follow up with some other things. After I was sitting here talking to you, I started, it'd be nice if I reach out to some of the girls at your gym or some of the girls at some other gyms and talk to them. And then maybe ultimately you and I can be a spark to increase membership throughout West Virginia.
Oh yeah.
My ultimate goal from the get-go, obviously I want people at my gym, so do you. But if this reaches other people in other cities, I want you just to go. I want people to start jiu-jitsu, MMA, kickboxing, all these things. I want them to have fun. I want them to learn something useful. Like going and doing spin class and Zumba is great. That's going to keep you in shape. It's awesome. Right. But if you can stay in shape and then also learn something that'll defend you and your family and your kids, that's even better, right? That's something great. So anyway, let's finish it up here, man. I appreciate everything. It's getting pretty late. So let's, that was awesome, man. Let's meet up again soon. Thanks for all your time. Where can, in case anybody's meeting or seeing this that we don't know, where can they find your gym at and all your stuff at?
So Parkersburg, West Virginia. I'm at 1739 St. Mary's Avenue in Parkersburg. You can find me on Facebook under Ronin Jiu-Jitsu and MMA, or just call me. My phone number's on the website. So I'm relatively easy to find.